Welcome to the Life Makeovers podcast. My name is Cindy D. Whitmer, and I am the Midlife Makeover Coach, helping you turn your midlife into your best life, one step at a time. Through powerful conversations, my own midlife roller coaster story, and over 3 decades of helping people transform their lives through counseling and coaching, I am on a mission to help you create your own definition of success and happiness. Thank you for being here. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I am so excited because I'm about to have a conversation that I have been eagerly anticipating with Phyllis Leavitt. Is that,
Levitt.
I forgot to ask you how
Levitt.
you say your
Yeah.
last name for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Well, she and I met recently, and just this year, actually, because we are both authors and we have worked with the same book coach, actually. And so we've been, working with each other through that part of our lives and ourselves. But we have a lot in common too, because we're both really interested in psychology, the human mind, and healing people and so forth. And so Phyllis is here to talk about her book called America in Therapy, which will be coming out later. I'll let her tell more about that. But please, everybody, get excited, listen up. This is going to be a great conversation about our culture here in America and what we can do to heal it and bring hope. So thank you, Phyllis, so much for being here. Please tell us more about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me so much. It's just wonderful to be here talking with you. Just sort of hopefully quickly, I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years, and I've been a client doing lots of deep work myself during some of that time. So I kind of know the journey from the inside and from the therapist chair. And really, long story short, what motivated me to write the book, America in Therapy, was seeing over many, many years with hundreds of people the dynamics of abusive families and the aftermath of abuse and neglect when it's not treated and when it's not stopped. And there are patterns of behavior that emerge from abusive family dynamics that have lasting effects for many, many people. And what I began to be aware of, and having studied as a graduate student and practicing as a family therapist as well as an individual therapist, the principles of family therapy really highlight that our family environment has a lot to do with the beliefs we adopt about ourselves, about other people, the role models of behavior we learn, particularly the role models of how to deal with conflict and differences of opinion. And the whole idea of family systems and family therapy spreads out beyond the family of origin to any grouping of people, is in a sense a family structure, a business, a school, a community, a state, a nation. And so I talk about the family of America through the lens of everything that I've learned about either health or mental ill health in the family of origin. And I look through that lens at what's going on in our country today with an eye to partly to diagnose, but with the goal of offering what would be restorative and healing, just as we do in individual therapy. We talk about the problems, we talk about some of the traumas and the terrible things that people have been conditioned by, not with the goal of blaming anybody, but with the goal of healing what has been harmed. And so that's the lens through which I'm looking at America in my book.
Oh my gosh, Phyllis, I love that. So, I was a licensed mental health counselor for 25 years too. So I share that view with you of the importance of when people need to heal and they need to make changes in their lives. We dig to find out,
That's right.
how they get started in life. What was the influence around them? What was the value system around them? What was the behavior around them?
Right.
And how has that helped them or hindered their evolvement as happy or unhappy people?
Right.
And I work with women in midlife now primarily, and it is it is such a wonderful awareness when they can understand that part of why they don't even recognize their own worth or have
Right.
confidence is way
Right.
back, because when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Exactly.
they were shunned, or they were abused, or they were neglected, or they were just told that, they were wrong, or they couldn't do this or that or whatever. And
Exactly.
what I love about what I hear you saying is about your research and your book and so forth, is that this the system that we call family is a metaphor
Right.
for our culture, the family of our
Exactly.
culture. So the same kinds of dynamics that can happen in a household
Right.
with a group of people can happen in a workplace group of people, schools, any organizations, statewide, nationwide, nations, and all of that. And so so what's the key then to healing those patterns that have been destructive?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, you could make the analogy to medicine. When someone has a pain, when some part of their body is not functioning well, when they have a fever or they're lying in bed and they can't move, we go to a doctor to diagnose what caused the symptom that they're having and not just treat the symptom as well as we can. I mean, sometimes we have to do that, but really dig deep for what the cause is, that's generating the dysfunction in the body. And it's really the same with our psyches, that our symptoms are a call for help for what's not working in our psyche. And the way that I'm talking about it is what's not working in the family system that's causing certain individuals to be symptomatic or certain groups to be symptomatic. And that is the most powerful way to look at healing. Rather than, we don't blame our toe if it's infected. We say what's causing the infection. But on a
Right.
psychological level, we haven't translated that. When we have highly symptomatic people who are perpetrating mass shootings or are embezzling from old people, we tend to just say they're bad people, but they weren't born bad people. There's no infant that's born an evil human being. And so something happened to them that set them on a track that made them highly symptomatic in a way that's destructive. There are also people who are highly symptomatic in ways that are not noticed, who become hermits, who turn in, who isolate, who are depressed and don't function. And they're a little bit less visible than the ones who become violent. But the ones who become violent are symptoms, and this is what I'm really talking about in my book, of dysfunction in the family of America. And I think we have to look at that if we really want to heal the divisiveness and the violence. People don't become school shooters for no reason.
Right.
Something happened to them that is terrible, that have disconnected them from their own humanity, that has disconnected them from other people in such a way that they could impact a community or a group of first graders in the way that they do. And we have to understand that. We may still have to separate them from society to be safe. But if we start to understand what are the root causes in the family of America that are dysfunctional, that are producing more and more school shooters, then we have a chance to heal.
Hmm.
Just the
Yeah.
way we look at, an abusive person in a family. What happened to them? What cycle are they repeating?
Again, they were not born abusive and violent
Right,
or destructive.
right. They learn
And this
that.
isn't, let's just blame mom and dad. This isn't it. We're looking at life as a system, right? With
That's right.
lots of players. It could have been a bully years ago. It could have been a daycare provider. It could have been a teacher. It could have been a coach. It could have been a parent,
Mhm.
grandparent, sibling. Who knows? It could have been chronic community issues. It could have been. It could be anything. But
Right.
I think you're saying is, if step one of healing America, maybe I'm saying, you tell me, but I'm thinking step one of healing as a culture is beginning to view the people who cause destruction, or whatever, however we want to label that, viewing them from a compassionate perspective of, wow, what is going on that this person is doing this?
Right.
What is going on that this has happened again in our culture? What is going on that whatever blank? And it's not just school shootings, it's anything
Right.
unhealthy, poverty.
Right.
Uh, I mean, we could go on any criminal behavior, right?
Mhm.
Any violent, even the philosophy of I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, I think. But this morning I was in a meeting with some people, and afterwards, some of us were talking, and we were talking about collective consciousness, and we were talking about even there's a collective consciousness in the world that says we must go to war to solve problems.
Absolutely.
So there you go,
Absolutely.
right? What would you say about
Absolutely.
all of that? I'm sorry, I just went
Yeah.
like on and on.
No, it's not extraneous. It's actually the biggest tip of the iceberg that we're looking at that somehow we don't see or we don't look at through the lens of what is actually even sustainable for the species of humanity. Because war today could very possibly be the end of life as we know it on Earth. And so to even entertain the idea of war and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction that we're now capable of producing, rather than pouring all of those resources, all those man hours, all that energy into healing, into bringing people down from the ledge of war to actually work out what are the problems. What is creating this mass divisiveness, hatred, and even desire for violence? And so,
Yeah.
for me, if we look at the individual family and we look at abuse family dynamics, there's some insight into what perpetuates that. And one of the things that I would say is, so we are conditioned. We're conditioned to right and wrong, good and evil. Good is supposed to fight evil rather than we're supposed to heal. And if you look at any really good therapy practice, and there's other healing modalities besides psychotherapy, but I'll talk about psychotherapy. Let's just say a couple comes to therapy, they're fighting, they're on the verge of divorce, they can't agree on how to raise their children or how to spend their money, or whatever it is they don't agree on that they're fighting about. They could get a divorce, and some people need to because their relationship is not healable. But ultimately, if therapy is to be helpful, and if the couple is actually committed to the relationship, the idea is not for one person to win the argument. The idea is for both parties to listen deeply and with growing compassion and understanding for the other person's point of view, which is the very best way to find a middle ground. Sometimes all it takes is for a person to feel deeply heard for them to get off their righteous position.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Right?
I so get that. Yes. I've said to people about relationship work too. We often say, it's me against him or it's me against her. And
Right.
it's like, no, it's the two of you over here together and the issues over here, right? The
Right.
symptoms, the money issues or the parenting
Right.
issues. So it's you
Right.
two, the team, against or in need to sort out this issue over here instead of
Right.
thinking you're on opposite teams. Just start there and go, yeah, we're on the same page here, we're on the same team. You think this, I think this, it's different, or you want to handle it this way, I want to handle it that way, it's different. How can we both get some of what we need or come to some middle to deal with this over here instead of we're
Right.
on opposite sides of the team?
Right. And that's sort of the foundation for that kind of work. How do we create that deep listening? How do we really listen the way that we want to be heard?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and most of us really want that. We want to be heard. But the thing is, our partner wants to be heard too. The other person wants to be heard too.
Of
So
course.
how do you create an environment that makes it safe and and possible for both people to be heard? And that's one of the gifts of the best kind of couples therapy, for instance, or family therapy. And with the goal of bringing the people back together, because that's actually what they want. We want to be loved. We want to belong. There's nobody, we might think we want to win the argument, but in reality, most people want to be loved. They want to belong. They want the relationship to actually work and be fulfilling. And we just haven't been taught how to do that. We've been taught to win the argument, but winning the argument doesn't win the relationship. And that's what we see happening in our country. There's massive rhetoric of argument and criticism and blame and violent, whatever is being hurled across the aisles, when actually the goal, if we could embrace it, is what would it be like if we had mediators in Congress that actually mediated a conversation where there's a difference of opinion between parties, between people, between whatever, and taught them how to listen and set the goal of coming back together for agreement. And one of the reasons why this is so profoundly important, and let me just throw in here, this is because I really want to throw this in somewhere, that this is one of the reasons why psychology is so helpful in the world we have today, because it's nonpartisan. It's not about left and right. It's about bringing people back together in some kind of harmony that's constructive. And if you look through the lens of the individual family, if you have parents that are fighting and violent and hateful toward each other, what's the effect on their children?
Mm,
It's
not
not good. And I've worked with hundreds of those children in adult form and in child form. And I can tell you, it is destabilizing, it is harmful, it is dangerous, because there's no stability, there's no ground of love, there's no role model of constructive conflict resolution. And children leave those homes unprepared to be constructive adults in the world that they're expected to function in. And I can say a lot more about that, later. But so that's what's happening in our country. We have leaders who are at each other's throats. And what's the effect on the American population? I've shared this many, many times. It wasn't until the 2016 election that I ever had a client in all the years I've been a therapist that came to therapy traumatized about the divisiveness in our country. I've never had that. And then since then, I've had many, many, many clients coming and talking about how they can't sleep at night because of the political divides and the hatred and the violence and the injustice. We're affected by that just the way children in abusive families are affected. And we have to know this. And a battle between right and wrong is not going to solve it. What solves it is if those parents come together and do the work of settling their disagreements or peacefully separating. But in America, we can't really peacefully separate. We live together. We have to work it out.
well, what a lot I've heard of many people living elsewhere, leaving the country, literally, like people
True.
leave
True.
families when they're too toxic, or leave
True.
marriages when it's too toxic, and that kind of thing
Yes.
too. And the
Yes.
other thing about growing up in when you're witnessing your parents fight, or your parents can't work it out, or there's a conflictual or chaotic environment, is you live in fear,
That's right.
and it makes an impression upon you that you're not worthy, you're not lovable. I
Absolutely.
think that is so much the reason why often in midlife, when people are sort of waking up, and realizing, oh gosh, what's the deal? They're
Yeah,
realizing, oh, so I'm carrying around decades of this burden here
that's
that I
right.
didn't realize I was carrying around. I didn't even know, I
Right.
didn't have the language for it. I didn't have the words for it. I didn't understand why I repeated the same marital behavior in my marriages, or
Exactly.
whatever, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do we begin one of the things you've made very clear is we need to listen to each other, which is
Right.
not easy for people to do. It's
I think it's
amazing
one of the
how
hardest things for people to do, honestly.
it's
I
so
think therapy
true.
is takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of tolerating some self-reflection that might not always be so great. We each have a part in something. If someone hits me, I'm not responsible for them hitting me. But maybe there's some healing I need to do about why I have been attracted to abusive people in my life. It's not about blame, it's about uncovering. And that was the other piece I wanted to bring in when we talk about couples and the need for deep listening and taking responsibility for our part in a dynamic, and treating each other the way we want to be treated and having the goal of repair of the relationship. Sometimes the work that's needed is individual work. Sometimes my wounds are so deep that I'm projecting them onto my partner, and I can't stop doing that until I heal some of what's happened to me. And so there's and I think that's very important. And one of the things that I stress, and you can tell me, from your experience how this plays out, is that there's an expression, and I don't know who started this expression, but it's a very true, I think, way of putting this thought, and that is that hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And most of us, no matter how much we see ourselves as the one who have been hurt, have also hurt people, maybe not intentionally, maybe not with malice, but we act our stuff out wherever we go.
Yep.
And those parts of the deep work of healing are just as important. It's just as important for me to process what happened to me that was unkind, that left me feeling really, like a flawed, unlovable person, as it is for me to process the things that I've done that have hurt people. And
Yeah.
as a country, what if we could embrace that with the idea of healing, not with blame, not with shame, but of course, if we've been hurt, we're going to hurt others. And as a country, we have a history. We have first of all, we have many hurt people that have come to our country to settle here. People who have been fleeing war, people who have been fleeing poverty, people who have been fleeing a religious persecution, who brought their traumas with them
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and and relived them and reenacted them unknowingly, perhaps, but they did, because we do. And as a country, we have also perpetrated terrible things on masses of people, what we've done to Native Americans and what we've done to Black people, for instance. Those are like big tips of a big iceberg, and we still do. We're still discriminatory. And what if we could be accountable for that in the way that, what they did in South Africa with truth and reconciliation, of like being accountable for the purpose of healing, not for the purpose of making deeper enemies. This is incredibly difficult work, and it's the work we need to do.
So we need to do it on an individual level first. Start there,
Yeah,
right? Start with
yeah.
me, start with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not to blame, shame. There's too much of that. That's part of the problem, but
That's
rather
part of the problem.
in my own
Yeah,
work, the book, the Midlife Makeover Method, the methodology I use in my coaching with people, step one is wake up. And what
mm,
I mean by that is what you're talking about. Like we need to wake up to who we are, what our strengths are, where our pain points are, and how our behavior is keeping us from having the life that we really, really want. So it's all
absolutely.
about taking full responsibility for our healing and for our understanding of how we've evolved, and then what we can do with that wisdom, because that knowledge is powerful.
Right.
It's so powerful toward that hope and healing that you're talking about, that we can have on a even a national and international level if we all, that saying, peace on earth begins at home. It begins right
Absolutely.
here. And
Absolutely.
then, because so let's talk about the ripple effect. Like if I'm healthy, you're healthy, everybody does their personal work and
Right.
really sorts it out, really changes their mindset, changes their behavior, is no longer carrying around the heavy hearted, shame or lack of forgiveness or anger or whatever it is, what does that do in a ripple effect with families, communities, nations, so forth? What do you
Yeah.
see?
And I think, what I would say, like, as a nutshell kind of thing, is that being accountable for the effects that the bad things that have happened to me have had on me, and being accountable for the ways that I've hurt people or, failed to show up because I didn't know how or couldn't or felt powerless or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever a person has done, that actually both set us free. If we really want to be our full potential, if we really want there to be the freedom to express our greatest gifts and our greatest strengths, those things emerge from a place of full self-responsibility, which is not the same as blame. It's
No,
it's not the
no.
same as blame at all. And when I was in graduate school and I had a class on that I attended on couples therapy, I only remember one thing that the instructor said. Well, actually, I remember two things. He said, no one wins a power struggle, because if you win the power struggle, you don't win the relationship.
Lost the war, right?
But the other thing that he said that is in line with what we're talking about, which was so really, really stuck with me, was he said, the couples who do the best in therapy are those in which each person takes ultimate responsibility for their own behavior.
That makes so
Because
much
people come to therapy, they want the therapist to change their partner, right?
sense.
They
That's
do,
right.
like, set my partner
That was my
straight,
experience
right?
too. Yeah. Here he
Right,
is. Fix him, please, so we can
right,
be happily married.
right, right. And one person can change the entire dance of a relationship. And if one person can do that, one business owner can do that. One head of a religious institution can do that. One governor of a state can do that. One congressman can do that. And one president can do that. We all have an amazing part we can play in transforming the dynamics that we live and we have to swim and survive in.
Okay, so I don't know if this is a fair question. So just whatever you want
It's
to
all
say.
fair.
But let's say, so most people have pretty strong feelings about their beliefs, or what they can get behind in our society and what they cannot get behind in our society, right?
Right.
So people have discussions, or people have discussion groups, or people have meetings, or even friends talk over coffee, and one says, well, I'm just going to come up with an example. Just This
Yeah.
is just an
Whatever.
example. People like transgendered people, shouldn't uh, have their own bathrooms. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of something off the top of my
Right.
head. And someone else, doesn't believe in that transgenderedness is even a thing. So what do? You just listen? Is that what you're saying? Like, instead of us trying to convince the other of our belief system about anything, whether it's anything, the economy, anything at all, we just listen to their perspective and accept that that is their perspective, which may be different from our own. And then, is that the answer? Acceptance of other people's beliefs that are different from ours? Or do you
Well,
know what I'm saying?
I'm not going to pretend that I have the whole answer to all of the, great conflicts that are alive and well in our society today, but I think it's part of the answer. I think most of us, didn't learn acceptance. We learned judgment.
Yes.
That's the generation I grew up in. We learned what's right, who's wrong, who's better, who's superior, who's inferior. Um, and, to some extent, there's a value in having values. I value love over hatred. I always will, you know. Um, but when you talk about some of these very hot topics that are going on in society today, I think we definitely need to learn tolerance. We need to learn tolerance of diversity, because I believe, and there may be other arguments about this, I believe we will always be diverse. We will always have differences of opinion. We will always have different hair color, body shape,
Okay. Yeah.
religious orientation. We just will, because that's the nature of being a human being. So we have this thrust for conformity. We also have that. We want to make people be like us. We want to feel like we belong to something that we're a part of that is sort of homogeneous. And at the same time, we have this opposite urge to express our individuality. And I think we have to understand that as part of the play of human consciousness and what plays out in society. So just even understanding that we have an urge for conformity, we have a need for individuality. And the most repressive families, the most abusive families, and the most abusive governments deny individuality and demand conformity. And we have to know that imbalance is a sign of mental unwellness. It's not an ideological issue. It's a mental wellness issue. And this is one of the big points of my book, is that kind of intolerance, and there's many points in my book, but that kind of intolerance on the extreme ends is an abuse dynamic. It's a power and control dynamic where an individual has no say because they're at the mercy of someone who has all the power and all the authority and has the power to hurt them if they don't conform. And we
Yes, so
just
that
have to
can
know
be
that.
a little boy or little girl's father or mother, or
Mhm.
that could be nations where people
Right.
want to be educated because the presidents or the prime ministers or the kings or the leaders or
Right.
what say no, you're not to be educated.
Right.
Right? Any that and on any scale,
Right.
anywhere is what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. And what you see in abusive families, you see in abusive governments, which is those who refuse to conform, refuse to just obey an abusive authority, and who try to speak the truth or try to have a divergent opinion or try to leave an abusive system are often targets of incredible violence and hatred and discrimination and alienation. And we see this. And it keeps replaying. If the dynamic is power is held only by a few and the rest of the population, whether it's in a family or a country, has no say and no rights, you're going to have a rebellion at some point.
Yes.
And often what happens, and this is very sad, but it's also a psychologically understandable phenomenon. Often those who rebel become like those they rebelled against because there's no real role model of like how we come back together.
So they fight
What we
too
need, right?
and judge and shame the
Right,
opposite side or whatever.
right. And we stand at this very pivotal place in human history where we really have the power to destroy ourselves. And to me, that should be one of the biggest wake up calls.
We really do. Yeah. I
We
mean,
really do.
yes, we already have the weapons of mass destruction. We
Right.
already have, I mean, yes, it's so true. So, okay, so we have a few minutes left together. I really want to
Yeah.
circle this back around to how can we practically approach these kind of dynamics on an individual level. What can we, if we were to give people just a few practical approaches or steps or ideas around to start that healing,
Yeah.
what would you most like to say about that?
Well, I think there's two big things. I mean, there's many big things. One of them is let's do our own work. You know, doing our own work takes a lot of courage. Sometimes, and I think a lot still in our culture, going to therapy or getting some kind of healing work that's not necessarily medical, but on a
Yeah.
psychological, emotional level is seen as a weakness that you shouldn't need
Oh,
anybody. You should be able to figure it all out yourself. It's a sign of, sort of a feminine thing. When in fact it takes great strength and great courage to do that kind of inner work, because the more we heal our own wounds, the less we are going to project them onto other people. And that's just a psychological fact as far as my experience has taught me. So do our own work. but also there's many principles of the best psychotherapy that we can just take into our ordinary lives. Listen deeply to somebody who has a difference of opinion. Try to feel into their world.
Mhm.
Express our own opinions if we need to and want to, in a way that is not confrontational or argumentative, but like, oh, I see you think this. Is it okay if I share with you that I have a different opinion? Or I see that differently. Can we talk about that? Rather than, how it often plays out. We can just be kinder to our neighbor. Nobody knows. Like I've had so many clients in my practice who were so brutally abused as children, and that wounded little child is in them everywhere they go. I had a client who was so beaten as a young man, as a child, that he literally feared that when his boss came into his office that he was going to get hit. That's It was just in his body. And he knew
Yeah.
it wasn't going to happen, but it was in his
Brain
body.
was protecting him, right? By saying,
Right,
"Oh, be afraid, be
right,
concerned."
right. So we don't know what the person at the checkout counter, the person on the other end of the phone, the
The
receptionist
driver on
in
the
the,
highway who's cutting
right.
you.
We don't know what they're bringing to a situation. We don't know that a kind word from us could change their day,
Oh my gosh.
and a mean look could activate years of trauma. And we can all be kinder. We can all, to me, the one of the secrets lying in hidden in plain sight is is an old saying that we all know: do unto others what you would have them do unto you. If we live by that, we'd have a different world tomorrow.
Totally different. Yeah. So, can I just, in response, say,
Please.
those of you out there who are thinking, well, therapy's not for me, or I don't need to do this work, or I'm supposed to just be strong and I, I don't, nothing affects me anymore. And we're supposed to be strong and independent and self sufficient in America, especially. We pride ourselves in that. Well, that is a symptom that is not healthy. That is a
Right.
symptom of our lack of psychological health,
That's right.
thinking we have to do it alone, thinking we have to be independent, self sufficient, and strong all the time. That is unhealthy, people.
Exactly.
That isn't how we're wired as people at all. We
Right.
want connection, we want belonging, we want to feel heard, as Phyllis has made so very, very clear. So please, everyone, hear us loud and clear. This is what therapy's for. This is what spiritual work can be about. This is what
Absolutely.
can be about. It can be all kinds of practices and modalities that are out there that will help you to sort through your own pain and trauma, that can can bring you to peace within yourself, which means, again, you'll show up in your relationships more peacefully and in a healthy manner, and the ripple effect just keeps going and going and going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautifully said. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you really, really want to say?
Oh, I have a whole book full.
When is the book coming? Now, the book's not out yet. It's
Right. The
called
book's not out
Living
yet.
There.
I have signed on with a publisher, and I do not yet have a date of release, but as soon as I do know that from the publisher, I will certainly let you know.
Yeah.
And anyone wants to go onto my website and sign up for my newsletter, you'll be the first to know when it is available. And I'm hoping it will be earlier than later next spring, but I think that's sort of the time frame.
So in the meantime, where can people find you, Phyllis, if they
Yeah.
be a part of that conversation and understand
Yeah.
growth?
Please. Yeah, because I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. I have lots of talks on YouTube. And my website is one of the best places to find me, which is www.phyllislevitt.com. And
Show notes.
I have podcasts on there, and I have blogs on there, and updated information about my book, and I'll just have more and more information on my website. So that's the central location, and You can find me in all those places. And thank you for asking.
Oh, of course. Well, gosh, I thank you so much for your perspective, for your wisdom, for your time today. I know you're super busy out there trying to heal all of America,
I know.
trying to heal us all, one person
Oh,
at a time, one system at a time. And gosh, I hope people really take in what you're saying and really hear the importance of understanding that yes, we're individuals, but we are a collective system,
yes,
and that we all can affect each other. And it can either be a destructive, violent,
exactly.
emotionally violent, physically violent, psychologically violent, spiritually violent approach with one another, or it can be very healthy, loving, kind, compassionate, and
Right.
healthy. So yeah, which kind of life do you want, people? Which kind of life
Mhm.
do you want? Start with yourself, and then just keep rolling it out. And gosh, it's gonna, I think your work's gonna change the world, Phyllis. I really do. I
Oh, you're
really,
so kind. Thank you. And
I really
that's all I ever wanted was to be of some kind of service. That's all I've ever wanted. So, and I
yeah.
know that you're on the same track. And so I so appreciate talking to you. I really do. I really do.
You know, I feel, I think you and I share a mission, and that is to heal people, you know,
Yeah.
just really to heal people, because
Yeah.
we know we've seen it in all kinds of forms. And
Yeah.
we know some things that can
Hmm.
really, really change the trajectory of people's lives if they just do the work. So
Absolutely.
uh,
One of the things that I've learned so profoundly is the greatest injuries that we have sustained are from a lack of love and belonging. Those are the most painful things that can happen to a human being. And the best healing is finding safe people to reconnect to and reignite that love and experience a sense of belonging. That is the best thing that we can do to heal ourselves and heal our world.
all right, well, let's just wrap it up right there. What a beautiful way
Okay, great.
to wrap it up. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. Please share this podcast with people. Have some conversations about it. Let's keep doing the work of healing. Thank you
Mhm.
again. And
Thank you.
I'll talk to you
Thank
again
you.
soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Makeovers podcast. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, find out more about my coaching programs, or download my free ebook, The Midlife Makeover Method, The Secret to Loving Yourself Fully and Living on Your Terms, then head over to my website at www.cindydwhitmer.com and have a wonderful day.